All right, fellas. So in this lecture, we're going to talk about idioms. All right. And all the idioms that we're going to do today, they're going to concern age. Okay. So how am I going to present the idioms? I'm first going to use the idiom inside a sentence. And then we're going to break it down further. All right. So we're going to talk about 6 idioms in this video. Let's get started. Okay. So the first sentence that I'm going to read to you, and you might try to figure out the meaning a little bit, is after climbing the hill, I realized I am not spring chicken. All right. I realized I am no spring chicken. So what does this idiom mean? So you're climbing up the hill, then you realize that, I am no spring chicken. So no spring chicken means you are not young anymore. All right. So you are not young anymore. You're getting old or getting tired. You cannot do the things that you used to do when you were young. Okay, so let's move on to the next idiom right here. And the second sentence here is going to be, Becky's worried she's getting on in years after spotting more gray hairs. Betty's worried she's getting on in years after spotting more gray hair. So I think this is obvious. So when you realize that you've got gray hair coming, you got one spring out over there, you got another one over there, like, I'm getting old. So the meaning of getting on in years, it means getting old. Getting old. Okay? All right. Don't get worried, or don't be distracted about your life dealings just because you're getting some gray hair. Even little kids sometimes do get gray hair here and there because of some genetic issues or the things that people eat nowadays and stuff. Okay. All right. So let's move on to the third idiom. Okay? Stick with me. All right. So these bright young children have just started college. These bright young children have just started college. So we can say these bright young things. So a young thing could mostly mean like, a child, somebody who's young. So these bright young things have started college, or have just started college. So what does this one mean? It means like you are young, or it means like we're talking about these people who are young. So bright young things means the young people. Okay? So in normal English, we actually don't mean things to mean people. Things are just objects. But right now, because we're trying to use this in an idiomatic way, then things mean young people. So these bright young things. All right, let's move on to our next idiom. And my assistant is a bit wet behind the ears. My assistant is a bit wet behind the ears. All right, so if something is wet, it's got some water, all right, or moisture around it. So if your assistant is wet, it means like they are young and experienced. All right, so my assistant is a bit wet behind the ears. He still has a lot to learn. So we mean like something wet. It means it's young and inexperienced because they've got a lot to learn still.
Zoom out.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to the next idiom, which is going to be the fifth one. I'm going to read the sentence again. Sanjay feels as old as the hills when his kids talk about technology. Sanjay feels as old as the hills when his kids talk about technology. So, as old as the hills, meaning you're feeling really old, because hills are always there. They've been there, they're going to be there for a long time, unless we blast them off. So, we're saying Sanjay feels as old as the hills. Sanjay feels really old. As old as the hills means really old. How do you feel? Do you feel as old as the hills? Or do you feel like no chicken spring? All right. Anyway, let's move on to the last idiom here. This TV show bridges the generation gap.
Zoom out.
The whole family loves it. This TV show bridges the generation gap. The whole family loves it. So whether you're young, old, or whichever age you are in, you would love this TV show. And the reason being that the show is good for all age. So the young, the old, the teenagers would just love it. It bridges a generation gap. All right. So what idioms have we looked at today? The first one is no chicken spring. Or we can say no spring chicken. The second one is getting in on years. Getting in on years. The third one is bright young things. Bright young things. The fourth one, wet behind the ears. Wet behind the ears. So what do you say? Wet behind the ears. All right. And the fifth one, as old as the hills. As old as the hills.
Zoom out.
And lastly, we talked about bridges the generation gap. Bridges the generation gap. All right. So which one would you like to keep on using amongst these idioms? I can't wait to see you in the next one. I hope this was a lovely one. Let's see what we're going to learn in the next idiom round. All right. Cheers and take care.